Welcome to my channel, a lead that bring your story about the love of a mafia boss. Now let's listen.
The fluorescent lights above buzzed like angry wasps, their harsh glare bouncing off the greasy linoleum floor of Marino's diner. My feet screamed with every step, the cheap canvas shoes doing nothing to cushion the relentless pounding against concrete disguised as flooring. 8 hours. No, 9 now. My shift should have ended an hour ago. But Denise called in sick, again. And Marco, our perpetually stressed manager, had looked at me with those pleading eyes that said he knew I couldn't afford to say no. I couldn't. The tips tonight had been mediocre at best. Crumpled singles and loose change that barely made a sound when I shoved them into my apron pocket. My daughter's medication cost $237. I had 63. The math was simple, brutal, and it sat in my chest like a stone. "Sweetheart, can we get some more coffee over here?" The man in booth 7 waved his empty mug, his voice carrying that edge of impatience that came from people who'd never had to wait for anything in their lives. "Right away, sir." My voice came out steadier than I felt, the customer service smile stretching across my face like a mask I'd worn so long it had left permanent creases. I grabbed the pot from the burner, its heat seeping through the thin handle, and made my way across the diner. The smell of burnt coffee and recycled grease had long since stopped bothering me. It clung to my uniform, my hair, probably my skin. I'd stopped noticing, the way you stop noticing a constant ache until someone presses directly on the bruise. Outside, rain began to fall, each drop catching the neon sign in the window. Marino's, red letters with the I flickering like a dying heartbeat. The weather matched my mood. Seattle in November was essentially one long, gray exhale of despair. My right ankle chose that moment to remind me of its existence, sending a sharp spike of pain up my leg. I'd twisted it last week carrying Emma up 3 flights of stairs to our apartment when the elevator broke. Again, it hadn't healed properly, because I hadn't rested it, couldn't afford to rest it. The bills didn't care about my pain threshold. "You look dead on your feet, Ava." Marco appeared beside me, his perpetual frown deepening as he took in what must have been my pale, exhausted face. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I lied. Because what else could I say? That my body felt like it was held together with duct tape and sheer willpower? That every step made me want to cry? That I was one more crisis away from completely falling apart? He didn't look convinced, but he nodded anyway. Table 12 just sat down, VIP section. I glanced toward the back of the diner where we kept 3 booths reserved for what Marco called special clientele, the kind of people who tipped well enough to make the extra effort of keeping the area pristine worthwhile. My heart sank. The VIP section meant more walking, more standing, more smiling, but it also meant better tips. "I've got it." I straightened my spine, ignoring how it protested, and smoothed down my stained uniform. The black fabric had seen better days, the white collar yellowed from too many washes in our apartment building's decrepit machines. The VIP section was separated from the main diner by a half wall and some strategically placed plastic plants that were supposed to look upscale, but mostly just looked sad. As I rounded the corner, the atmosphere shifted. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not actual silence, the diner was never quiet, but a pocket of it. A bubble where sound seemed muted, careful. 3 men occupied the booth, but my attention snared on the one in the middle. He sat like darkness had taken human form, and decided to wear an expensive suit. Everything about him spoke of money, but not the flashy kind that begged for attention. This was quieter, more dangerous. His suit was black, perfectly tailored to shoulders that suggested he knew his way around more than just boardrooms. The fabric caught the light in a way that my polyester uniform never would, speaking of price tags that probably exceeded my yearly rent. But it was his face that made my breath catch. He couldn't have been more than 30, maybe 32, with features that belonged on some Renaissance painting of a fallen angel. Sharp jawline, dark hair styled with careless precision, and eyes. God, those eyes. Even from a distance, they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Dark, almost black, with an intensity that made my stomach tighten with something that wasn't quite fear, but wasn't quite anything else either. The 2 men flanking him were clearly security. They had that stillness about them. That coiled readiness that suggested violence was always just a heartbeat away. One of them, built like a refrigerator with a crew cut, scanned the diner constantly. The other, leaner but no less dangerous looking, kept his attention fixed on his phone, though I suspected he was aware of everything happening around him. "Good evening, gentlemen. Can I start you off with something to drink?" My voice came out slightly breathless, and I hated myself for it. The man in the middle didn't look up immediately. He was reading something on his phone, his long fingers moving across the screen with practiced ease. His hands were beautiful in a way that seemed almost unfair, elegant, but with scarred knuckles that told stories I probably didn't want to know. When he finally lifted his gaze, the impact was physical. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, the diner, the pain in my feet, the endless weight of my exhaustion, all of it faded into background noise. Water. Still, not sparkling. No ice. His voice was deep, controlled, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Something European, maybe Italian, softened by years in America, but never quite erased. "Of course. And for you?" I turned to the others, grateful for an excuse to break that eye contact. They ordered. Coffee, black, nothing. And I scribbled it down on my pad, though my hand trembled slightly. I could feel his gaze on me, a tangible weight that made the hair on my arms stand up. "We'll need a few minutes with the menu," he said. And it wasn't a request. "Absolutely. I'll be right back with your drinks." I turned, desperate to escape that suffocating attention, and immediately regretted it. My ankle, pushed beyond its limits, decided it had endured enough. It buckled without warning, sending me lurching forward. My hands flew out instinctively, and I grabbed for the table. Not their table, thank God, but the empty one beside it, to catch myself. The water pitcher I'd been carrying for the table across the aisle crashed to the floor, exploding in a spectacular spray of glass and liquid that seemed to spread in slow motion, reaching across the tile like accusatory fingers. The sound in the quiet VIP section was deafening. "Oh God, I'm so sorry, I gasped, trying to right myself, but my ankle gave another sharp protest, and I stumbled again. Pain shot up my leg like lightning, white-hot and blinding. "Don't move." The command came from him, sharp and immediate, cutting through my panic. But I was already bending down, trying to pick up the larger pieces of glass with shaking hands, my vision blurring with tears of humiliation and pain. This was it. This was the moment Marco would fire me. I couldn't afford to be fired. Emma needed her medication. We needed to eat. The rent was already 2 weeks late. I said, "Don't move." The voice was closer now, right above me, and I froze. A hand appeared in my line of vision, that elegant, scarred hand, reaching down. Not for the glass, for me. "You're hurt." It wasn't a question. His voice had lost some of its sharp edge, replaced by something I couldn't identify. "When did you injure your ankle? How did he—" I looked up and found myself eye level with his perfectly polished shoes, Italian leather, probably worth more than everything in my apartment combined. Slowly, my gaze traveled up, past the sharp crease of his trousers, past the subtle gleam of his belt buckle, past the crisp white shirt and dark suit jacket, until I met those fathomless eyes again. He was standing now, having moved faster than I'd registered, and he was looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. Not disgust, not impatience. Something else entirely. Something that made my pulse skip in a way that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with a danger I didn't yet understand. "Last week," I heard myself answer, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's fine. Really, it's not fine." He cut me off, then turned his head slightly. "Dante." The refrigerator with a crew cut appeared beside him instantly. "Boss?" "Clear this. And find the manager." His eyes never left mine. "Tell him there's been an accident, but it's been handled. Generously. Boss." The word echoed in my head, settling into place with all its implications. "I can clean it up, really. I don't need—" I started, but he was already reaching down, and before I could process what was happening, his hand closed around my upper arm. Not roughly, but with a firmness that suggested arguing would be pointless. "Can you stand?" he asked, and there was something in his tone now, something almost gentle. No, that wasn't right. Gentle implied softness. This was control, carefully applied. Yes, but when I tried to put weight on my ankle, it screamed in protest, and I gasped, swaying. His other hand shot out, catching my waist, steadying me. The touch burned through the thin fabric of my uniform, his palm warm and solid against my side. He smelled like something expensive and dangerous, sandalwood and smoke, with an underlying note of gunmetal that shouldn't have been appealing but somehow was. No, you can't. He stated it as fact, then looked at Dante again. Call Dr. Marchetti. Tell him I need him at the palazzo, immediately. Wait, no, I don't need a doctor. I just need to... Panic was rising in my chest now, sharp and acidic. I couldn't afford a doctor. I definitely couldn't afford whatever doctor this man used. Please, I have to get back to work. You can't walk. He said it softly, almost kindly, but with the absolute certainty of someone used to being right. His hand was still on my waist, keeping me upright, and I realized with horror that without it, I would probably collapse. And you won't. Not on my watch. Please, I really can't afford... The words tumbled out before I could stop them, raw and desperate. Heat flooded my cheeks. Nothing like admitting your poverty to a man who probably spent more on his watch than I made in 6 months. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. Recognition, maybe, or calculation. You misunderstand. His voice remained calm, measured. You're not paying for anything. You were injured while working. That makes it an occupational hazard, which means your employer is responsible. He paused, his gaze sharpening. Unless you'd prefer to file a workers' compensation claim, I'm certain the paperwork would be extensive. My mouth opened, then closed. Workers' comp meant reports, meant Marco getting in trouble, meant possibly losing the job anyway because suddenly I'd be a liability. The twisted logic of surviving at the bottom. You couldn't afford to protect yourself because protection came with consequences you couldn't afford either. He saw the understanding cross my face and nodded once, satisfied. That's what I thought. So we'll do this my way. Dante? Already called, boss. Doc will meet us in 20. Us. Meet us. Wait. I can't just leave. I looked around desperately for Marco, for any escape from whatever was happening. The other customers were staring now, their curious gazes adding another layer to my humiliation. My shift doesn't end for another hour, and your shift ended the moment you injured yourself further by continuing to work on a damaged ankle. He wasn't asking, wasn't negotiating, simply stating reality as he saw it, or rather, as he was making it. You'll come with me, see the doctor, and then we'll discuss your circumstances. Discuss my circumstances. The words sent ice down my spine. Marco appeared then, his face flushed, eyes darting between me and the man whose hand was still on my waist. Mr. Castellano, I'm so sorry for the disruption. We'll of course comp your entire... That won't be necessary. Castellano. The name clicked into place with the force of recognition I'd been avoiding. Castellano. As in the Castellano family. As in the rumors, the whispered stories, the news reports that never quite stuck because witnesses never quite testified. However, your employee requires medical attention. I'm ensuring she receives it. It wasn't a discussion. It was a statement of intent, delivered with the casual authority of someone who'd never been told no, and wouldn't recognize it if he heard it. Of course, whatever she needs. Marco was practically bowing, which would have been funny if I wasn't currently being held upright by what was very likely a mafia boss. Ava, take whatever time you need. Your job will be here. Her job will be evaluated once she's recovered. Castellano's words were silk over steel. If the working conditions here contributed to her injury, adjustments will need to be made. The threat hung in the air, unspoken, but unmistakable. Marco went even paler. Now, if you'll excuse us. Castellano shifted, and before I could protest, his arm moved from my waist to behind my knees. He lifted me as if I weighed nothing, cradling me against his chest with the kind of ease that spoke of strength carefully controlled. Put me down. The words came out as a strangled whisper. Every eye in the diner was on us now. My humiliation was complete. Please, I can walk. I just need... You can't walk. You already established that when you nearly fell twice. His voice was low, meant only for me, and carried a note of something almost like amusement. Almost. Stop fighting and let me help you. Help. As if men like him helped people like me without expecting something in return. But what choice did I have? My ankle throbbed with every heartbeat, sending waves of nausea through me. I couldn't stand on my own, couldn't work, couldn't even maintain the basic dignity of walking out of here under my own power. So I stopped struggling. His chest was solid beneath my cheek, his heart beating steady and slow against my ear. That expensive scent surrounded me. Sandalwood, smoke, and something darker I couldn't name. Dangerous. Everything about him screamed danger. From the way his security moved ahead to check the exit, to the absolute certainty in his movements, to the casual way he'd taken control of my entire situation in under 5 minutes. The rain hit us the moment we stepped outside. Cold, sharp drops that felt like tiny accusations. A black SUV waited at the curb, sleek and gleaming despite the weather. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like sheets of obsidian. The lean security guard, not Dante, had the rear door open before we reached it. Easy, Castellano murmured as he maneuvered me inside. The interior was all black leather and new car smell, with seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He set me down carefully, his hands lingering a moment longer than necessary, then slid in beside me, too close. The back seat was spacious, but he sat near enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, could count the gold flecks in those dark eyes if I was foolish enough to look directly at them. Dante took the driver's seat. The other guard, whose name I still didn't know, moved to the passenger side. Doors closed with expensive, solid thuds. The locks engaged with a click that sounded far too final. Where are we going? My voice came out smaller than I intended. My home. The palazzo. He was looking at his phone again, scrolling through messages with that same focused intensity he'd had in the diner. The doctor will meet us there. Your home. I repeated it, trying to make it sound less insane, trying to make the reality of sitting in a vehicle with a man who probably had people killed before breakfast sound remotely normal. I can't go to your home. I have a daughter. She's with my neighbor, but I need to... His head snapped up. A daughter. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway, my hand instinctively moving to my apron pocket where I kept the small photo of Emma, 3 years old, gap-toothed smile, eyes that held none of the weariness mine carried. How old? 3. Why was I answering? Why was I telling this stranger anything? Something shifted in his expression, subtle but unmistakable. His jaw tightened. And her father? Gone. The word tasted bitter. He left before she was born. A lie, but easier than the truth. Easier than explaining that Jake hadn't just left. He'd stolen from me, taken the money my mother left me when she died, cleaned out our joint account, and disappeared into whatever hole people like him crawled into when their crimes caught up with them. Castellano studied me for a long moment, and I had the uncomfortable feeling he could see right through my lie, could see everything. Every desperate choice, every skipped meal, every night I'd cried in the bathroom so Emma wouldn't hear. What's your daughter's name? Emma. It came out as a whisper. He nodded once, then turned to Dante. Send someone to... He looked at me expectantly. What? No, I can't tell you where I live. I can't. Your daughter needs to know you're all right. His voice was patient, but firm. And you need to not be worried about her while the doctor examines you. So you'll tell Dante your address, and he'll send someone to inform your neighbor that you've been delayed but are safe. Unless you'd prefer your 3-year-old to spend the evening wondering where her mother is. The manipulation was so smooth I almost didn't catch it. Almost. But he was right, damn him. Mrs. Chen would be worried. Emma would be worried. And I had no phone. It had died hours ago, and the charger was broken. No way to contact them. I gave Dante the address, hating myself with every word. Make sure Chen, that's the neighbor, knows she'll be compensated for her time. Castellano added, still looking at his phone, generously. I can't pay you back for any of this. The words burst out, sharp with frustration. Whatever you're spending, whatever this is, I can't. I haven't asked you to. He glanced up, and there was something predatory in his gaze now. Something that made my breath catch. Consider it an investment. In what? His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. Something more dangerous. That remains to be seen. The vehicle glided through Seattle's wet streets, moving with a smoothness that spoke of superior suspension and a price tag I didn't want to contemplate. Rain streaked the windows, turning the city lights into watercolor blurs. We left downtown behind, heading toward the hills where houses became estates, and estates became fortresses. How long have you worked at Marino's? The question came casually, but I was learning nothing this man said was truly casual. 6 months. Since Jake left. Since I'd lost the apartment we could almost afford and moved into the one we definitely couldn't. Since everything fell apart. And before that, I was a student, nursing school. Another life. Another version of myself who thought planning for the future meant something. His eyebrow rose slightly. What happened? Life happened. I kept my voice flat. Babies are expensive, so is rent. Nursing school became a luxury I couldn't afford. He absorbed this information with a slight nod, then returned to his phone. The silence stretched, broken only by the whisper of tires on wet pavement and the occasional murmur as Dante spoke into his earpiece. The palazzo, when we reached it, wasn't what I expected. Not that I'd known what to expect from a mafia boss's home, but the understated elegance caught me off guard. It sat behind high walls and iron gates that opened smoothly at our approach. The building itself was modern, all clean lines and dark glass, but with classical touches, pillars, archways, that suggested old money trying to reconcile with new power. Dante pulled into an underground garage that held more vehicles than some dealerships, each one sleek, dark, expensive. The SUV's engine died, and suddenly the silence felt oppressive. "Can you walk if I support you?" Castellano asked. "I can try." That's not what I asked. I met his gaze, frustrated. No, probably not. He nodded, seemingly satisfied by the honest answer, and exited the vehicle. My door opened a moment later, and once again I found myself being lifted as if I were made of air. This time, I didn't protest. My ankle was throbbing with a vengeance now, each pulse sending nausea rolling through my stomach. The elevator was mirrored, forcing me to confront my reflection. I looked exactly as terrible as I felt. Hair escaping its ponytail, uniform stained and wrinkled, face pale except for 2 spots of feverish color on my cheeks. Next to Castellano's dark, composed elegance, I looked like something the cat dragged in and then thought better of. Stop. His voice cut through my self-assessment. Stop what? Looking at yourself like that, like you're less than. The observation was so unexpected, so strangely intimate, that I didn't have a response. The elevator doors opened before I needed one. His apartment, no, penthouse, occupied the entire top floor. The doors opened directly into a space that was all dark wood, leather, and the kind of minimalist design that only looked simple because everything cost a fortune. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Seattle's skyline glittering through the rain, the city I'd lived in my entire life, looking suddenly foreign and beautiful from this height. He carried me through the open living area and down a hallway, finally setting me down on a leather sofa in what appeared to be a private study. Built-in bookshelves lined with actual books, a massive desk with multiple monitors, and a bar cart that held bottles worth more than my security deposit. "The doctor will be here shortly." He stepped back, and I immediately felt the absence of his warmth, which was ridiculous. "You'll stay until he's examined you and provided treatment. No arguments." And then? I hated how small my voice sounded. He studied me for a long moment, and I had the sense of being catalogued, evaluated, assessed for value in some equation I couldn't begin to understand. "And then," he said softly, dangerously, "we negotiate." The doctor arrived within 15 minutes, a silver-haired man with kind eyes and hands that moved with practiced efficiency. Dr. Marchetti, Castellano had called him. He examined my ankle with gentle precision, while I sat rigid on the leather sofa, hyper-aware of Castellano watching from his position near the window. "Severe sprain, possibly a minor fracture," Dr. Marchetti announced in accented English. his touch careful as he wrapped my ankle in a temporary brace. "You'll need an X-ray to be certain. But regardless, you've been walking on this for too long. The swelling is significant. Can she walk?" Castellano's question cut through the clinical assessment. "Not for at least a week, possibly 2. She needs rest, ice, elevation. Crutches at minimum." The doctor looked at me with something like reproach. "You should have seen someone immediately when this happened." Should have. The words of people who'd never had to choose between a doctor's visit and groceries. "I'll arrange for the X-ray tomorrow." Castellano's tone made it clear this wasn't negotiable. "What else does she need?" They discussed me as if I wasn't there. Medications, treatment protocols, follow-up appointments. I watched the rain streak the windows and tried to calculate how much worse this situation could get. I was in a Mafia boss's penthouse, unable to walk, completely dependent on his generosity that would come with a price. Everything did. Rest is the most critical factor, Dr. Marchetti was saying as he packed his supplies. Keep weight off it entirely for the next 48 hours, then minimal weight bearing with support. Ice every few hours. And, he looked at me directly now, actually rest. That means not working. Not working meant no money. No money meant no medication for Emma. No rent, no food. The panic must have shown on my face because Castellano's expression shifted. Something almost like understanding flickering across those severe features. "That's been handled," he said simply. "Dr." Marchetti left with a respectful nod that spoke of long acquaintance, and then it was just the two of us in the quiet study. Rain drummed against the windows. Seattle sprawled below, oblivious to whatever negotiation was about to unfold in this expensive room. "You said we'd negotiate." I broke the silence, needing to control something, anything, even if it was just getting the bad news over with. "So, negotiate." "What do you want?" He moved from the window, crossing the space between us with predatory grace. He didn't sit. Instead, he leaned against the edge of his desk, arms crossed, studying me with that unreadable intensity. "Tell me about your daughter's father." Not what I'd expected. The truth this time. My hands twisted in my lap. "I told you." "You lied." No accusation in his tone, just certainty. Men who simply leave don't generate the kind of fear I see in your eyes. "So tell me, what did he do?" Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the pain medication Dr. Marchetti had given me starting to work, loosening my tongue. Maybe it was the strange safety of knowing this man had already seen me at my absolute worst. So what was one more humiliation? He stole from me. The words came out flat, drained of emotion. We weren't married, but we had a joint account. My mother died 2 years ago, left me some money. Not much, but enough to finish school. Enough for a real start. Jake. His name tasted like ashes. He took it all. $23,000. Cleaned out the account and disappeared. "Did you report it?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "Report it to who? The police?" We were both on the account. Legally, he had every right to take it. They told me it was a civil matter, that I'd need to sue him. With what money? Using what address, since he vanished? I shook my head. So no, I didn't report it. I just survived. Castellano's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. His full name. Why? Suspicion crept into my voice. Because men who steal from the mothers of their children deserve consequences. He said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, that it took a moment for the implication to sink in. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. No, I don't want... Whatever you're thinking, I don't want that. I just want to forget he existed. Does your daughter ask about him? The question hit like a physical blow. She's 3. She doesn't understand yet. But she will. He pushed off the desk, moving closer. Not threatening, exactly, but intense. She'll ask why her father left, why he didn't love her enough to stay, and you'll have to find answers that don't break her heart. How did he know? How could he possibly understand that fear, that someday Emma would look at me with those innocent eyes and ask the questions I had no good answers for? That's my problem to solve, I managed. Perhaps. He crouched in front of me, bringing us eye level. This close, I could see the faint scar along his jaw, the slight crook in his nose that suggested it had been broken at least once. Or perhaps I'm offering you a different solution. What kind of solution? My heart was racing now, and I couldn't tell if it was fear or something more dangerous. You need money. You need stability. You need to provide for your daughter without destroying yourself in the process. He ticked off each point with methodical precision. I can give you all of that. In exchange for what? Because there was always an exchange. Always a price. His lips curved slightly. Your company. I blinked. My company? I find you interesting, Ava. The way he said my name, slow and deliberate, made my skin prickle. You're educated, resilient, and you clearly care more about your daughter than your own well-being. These are admirable qualities, rare ones. You don't know anything about me. I know you continued working on a severely sprained ankle because you needed the money. I know you tried to clean up broken glass while in obvious pain because you were terrified of losing your job. I know you're afraid of accepting help because you've learned that help always comes with strings. His gaze held mine, dark and fathomless. Am I wrong? No. He wasn't wrong. And that scared me more than anything else. What do you actually want? I pressed. Be specific. Dinners, conversations, your presence at certain events where appearing domestic would be advantageous. He straightened, towering over me again. You'll live here, you and your daughter. You'll have your own rooms, your privacy. In exchange, you'll be available when I need you to be. You want me to be what exactly? A mistress? A companion. He cut me off, voice sharp. Nothing you don't consent to. I'm not interested in coercion. Just manipulation? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Surprisingly, he smiled, a real smile this time, brief but genuine. You're braver than you think. Most people don't challenge me. Most people aren't desperate enough to be stupid. It's not stupid to recognize an opportunity. He moved to the bar cart, pouring amber liquid into a crystal glass. You'd have a substantial monthly allowance, enough to save, to eventually return to school if you wanted. Your daughter would attend excellent schools, have everything she needs. Healthcare, stability, safety. Safety. The word hung between us, loaded with implication. Safe from what? I asked quietly. He took a slow sip of his drink before answering. The world is dangerous for women alone with children. You know this already. You've been living it. He gestured vaguely toward my ankle. You injured yourself weeks ago and couldn't afford to rest. How long before it's something worse? How long before you're too hurt to work at all? And then what happens to Emma? Each word landed like a stone, building a wall of logic I couldn't quite climb over. Because he was right. I was one serious injury, one major illness, one broken-down car away from complete disaster. We lived on the knife's edge, and every day was just hoping we wouldn't slip. This is insane, I whispered. Perhaps. He set down his glass. But sanity hasn't served you particularly well, has it? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned slightly, then looked back at me. Your neighbor has been informed you're safe. Emma is asleep. Mrs. Chen says to take whatever time you need. The thought of Emma sleeping, unaware her mother was sitting in a stranger's penthouse contemplating an arrangement that felt like selling herself, made my chest tight. I need to think about this, I said finally. Of course. He checked his watch, something sleek and expensive that probably cost more than a year of my salary. It's late. You'll stay here tonight. I can't. You can't walk, he reminded me, patient but firm. And before you panic, there are 6 bedrooms in this penthouse. You'll have your own, with a lock if it makes you feel better. Dante will bring you something to eat, and in the morning, we'll discuss this further. Agreed? What choice did I have? My ankle throbbed with renewed intensity, as if reminding me of my current helplessness. I was trapped here by my own body's limitations, by circumstances I hadn't chosen but couldn't escape. Agreed, I said, hating the defeat in my voice. He nodded, then moved to the door. One more thing, Ava. I looked up at him. This beautiful, dangerous man, who'd somehow turned my life completely upside down in the span of a few hours. Jake Martinez. That's his full name, isn't it? When I didn't answer, he smiled slightly. Your reaction tells me I'm right. Consider it handled. I told you you didn't want him hurt. I heard you. His expression was unreadable, but you didn't say you didn't want your money back. So I'm getting your money back. Call it a gesture of good faith. He left before I could protest further, the door clicking shut behind him with quiet finality. I sat in the expensive silence, surrounded by luxury I'd never aspired to, trapped in a situation I couldn't fully understand. Through the window, Seattle glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and distant. Somewhere down there was my tiny apartment, my sleeping daughter, my real life. And here I was, at the top of the world, with a man who terrified and intrigued me in equal measure, being offered everything I needed wrapped in a package I wasn't sure I could afford to accept. The leather sofa was soft beneath me. My ankle pulsed with each heartbeat, and somewhere in my chest, beneath the fear and the exhaustion and the overwhelming sense of unreality, something else stirred. Something I didn't want to name, something that whispered this might not be the worst thing that had ever happened to me. That thought scared me more than anything else. Dante appeared shortly after with a tray of food. Real food. Not the diner leftovers I usually survived on. Soup that smelled like heaven. Fresh bread, fruit that looked like it had been selected by someone who actually cared about quality. I ate mechanically, my mind churning through everything that had happened. The bedroom he led me to was bigger than my entire apartment. The bed could have slept 4 people comfortably. There was indeed a lock on the door, which I used immediately, though I wasn't sure what I was locking out. Or locking in. I lay on sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent, staring at the ceiling, and tried to make sense of the impossible choice ahead of me. Take Castellano's offer and secure Emma's future. Refuse and return to slowly drowning in poverty. When I finally slept, I dreamed of dark eyes and dangerous smiles, of cages made of gold and of drowning in water that tasted like expensive whiskey and smelled like sandalwood smoke. Morning arrived with pale light filtering through curtains I didn't remember closing. For a disoriented moment, I forgot where I was, the mattress too soft, the sheets too smooth, the silence too complete. Then reality crashed back with the weight of an avalanche. I was in Castellano's penthouse. My ankle announced its presence with a dull, persistent throb. Better than last night, but still tender enough to remind me I wasn't going anywhere without help. The brace Dr. Marchetti had applied was still secure, professional and confining. A soft knock on the door made me tense. Yes? Miss Ava? A woman's voice, accented and gentle. I'm Maria. Mr. Castellano asked me to check if you needed anything. I pulled myself up, wincing as my ankle protested even that small movement. I'm fine, thank you. May I come in? I've brought breakfast and some clothes that might fit you better than... She trailed off diplomatically, but I knew what she meant. Better than my stained, wrinkled uniform that smelled like grease and desperation. Just a moment. I hobbled to the door, unlocked it, and found a short, round woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled into a neat bun. She carried a tray in one hand, and draped over her other arm were clothes, soft fabrics in neutral colors that looked comfortable and expensive. Mr. Castellano thought you might want a shower and change, Maria said, setting the tray on the bedside table. The bathroom has everything you need. I can help you if... I can manage. The words came out sharper than intended. I softened my tone. Thank you, though. Really. She smiled, understanding in her expression. Of course. I'll leave you to it. If you need anything, just press the button on the phone. 9 will reach me directly. After she left, I examined the breakfast tray. Fresh fruit, yogurt, granola, coffee that smelled like it cost more per pound than I made per hour. My stomach growled, reminding me I'd barely eaten yesterday. I forced myself to take small, measured bites, trying not to think about how Emma would love the strawberries, how this single breakfast probably cost more than our weekly grocery budget. The shower was an exercise in careful maneuvering. I kept my braced ankle out of the water as best I could, leaning against the marble wall for support. The bathroom was bigger than Emma's bedroom, all gleaming fixtures and heated floors. The shower had more settings than my car, when I'd had a car. The clothes Maria brought fit surprisingly well. Soft black leggings, a cream-colored sweater that felt like a cloud, even underwear still in packaging. The attention to detail should have been comforting. Instead, it felt invasive, like Castellano had cataloged my size just by looking at me, filed the information away for future use. I was struggling with my sock, trying to pull it over the brace one-handed while balanced on one foot, when another knock sounded. "Come in," I called, expecting Maria. Castellano entered instead, and the air in the room immediately felt thinner. He'd changed from last night's formal suit to dark jeans and a black Henley that clung to shoulders that had no business being that broad. His hair was slightly damp, suggesting a recent shower, and he looked younger somehow, still dangerous, but more human. "You should have called for help." He crossed the room before I could respond, kneeling in front of me and taking the sock from my hands. His movements were efficient, careful not to jostle my ankle as he worked the fabric over the brace. "I can dress myself," I protested weakly. "I'm sure you can, but you don't have to." He finished with the sock and looked up at me, his face level with my knee, close enough that I could see the exact shade of his eyes. Not black, but a deep, rich brown that caught the morning light. "That's the point of my offer, Ava. You don't have to do everything alone anymore." The words settled over me like a weight, or maybe like wings. I couldn't tell which. He stood, offering his hand. "Come. We need to talk, and you need to eat more than the few bites you managed. How did you—" "Maria reports to me," he said it without apology, "as does everyone in this building. I like to know what's happening under my roof." Control. Everything with him came back to control. He supported me as we made our way to the main living area. In daylight, the space was even more impressive and more intimidating. Everything was precisely placed, exactly chosen, a reflection of a mind that orchestrated rather than simply lived. He settled me on the sofa, the same one from last night, and Maria appeared almost instantly with more food. Eggs cooked perfectly, toast with butter that melted on contact. More of that incredible coffee. Castellano sat across from me, a glass of water in his hand, watching as I ate. "You don't eat breakfast?" I asked, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. "I ate hours ago. I'm an early riser." He set down his glass. "Your neighbor was contacted again this morning. Emma is fine, ate a full breakfast, and is currently watching cartoons. Mrs. Chen asks if you'll be picking her up today." My heart clenched. A full day. I'd been away from Emma for a full day, the longest we'd been apart since she was born. "I need to see her." "Of course. Dante will take you whenever you're ready." He paused. "Unless you'd prefer to bring her here." The offer hung between us, loaded with implication. Bringing Emma here would mean something. Would mean I was considering his proposal seriously, not just being polite until I could escape. "I need to talk to you first," I said carefully. "About your offer." "I'm listening." I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone despite the delicious food. "You said I'd live here, with Emma. That we'd have our own space, our privacy. But you also said you'd need me available." "Available for what, exactly? What would my actual responsibilities be?" He leaned back, steepling his fingers, a gesture that somehow made him look both thoughtful and predatory. "I attend various events, dinners, charity galas, business functions. Many require a companion. You would accompany me to these events." "As what? Your girlfriend? As whatever we tell people you are." He interrupted smoothly. "The specifics don't matter. What matters is that you present well, that you're comfortable in social situations, and that you understand discretion. Discretion about your business, not a question. Discretion about everything. What you see, what you hear, who you meet." His gaze intensified. "I'm offering you a life of considerable comfort, Ava. But comfort requires trust, and trust requires silence." There it was. The real price. Not just my company, but my complicity. Being present for things I'd probably rather not see. Knowing things I'd be safer not knowing. And if I see something I can't stay silent about, I had to ask, even though I suspected I wouldn't like the answer. "You won't." He said it with absolute certainty. "Because I wouldn't put you in that position. I'm not interested in making you an accomplice to anything. I simply need someone who understands that my business is private and who can be trusted not to repeat what's discussed in private settings. That's a lot of trust to place in someone you just met, is it? He tilted his head slightly. You've already kept one secret today. You didn't tell Maria where you really were last night when she asked. You said you'd been at a friend's place. A small lie, perhaps, but it tells me you understand the value of discretion instinctively. I had said that, I realized. Without even thinking about it, I'd protected his privacy, and my own, because admitting I'd spent the night in his penthouse would have led to questions I couldn't answer. How long would this arrangement last? I asked. As long as it's beneficial to both of us. He spread his hands. If you're unhappy, if you want to leave, you're free to do so. Though I would expect reasonable notice, and I'd want to ensure you and Emma were properly set up before you left. You'd just let me go? No strings? No consequences? Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. I'm not interested in holding hostages, Ava. Willing participation is far more valuable than forced compliance. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. Because the alternative he was offering was so much better than what I had. A safe home, financial security, the ability to breathe without constantly calculating whether I could afford the next crisis. What about Emma? The most important question. What would her life look like here? For the first time since I'd met him, Castellano's expression softened. Just a fraction, but enough to notice. She would be protected, safe. She'd have access to excellent schools, activities, whatever she needs to thrive, and... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I would ensure she's cared for, but I wouldn't attempt to replace her father or interfere with your parenting. She's your daughter. Those decisions would remain yours. You don't like children? I couldn't help asking. I don't know children. The admission seemed to cost him something. I grew up in a world where childhood ended early, but I respect what you're trying to do for yours. That matters to me. Before I could process that unexpected vulnerability, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted, hardened into something cold and dangerous that made my breath catch. Excuse me. He stood abruptly. I need to take this. He moved to the window, his back to me, and answered in rapid Italian. I didn't speak the language, but I understood tone. Whoever was on the other end was getting orders, delivered with the kind of cold precision that reminded me exactly who I was dealing with. When he ended the call, he stood there for a long moment, tension visible in the set of his shoulders. Then he turned back to me, and his expression was carefully neutral again. I have something for you. He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to me. Inside was a check, made out to me, for $23,000. My hands started shaking. What is this? Your money, the amount Martinez stole from you. He said it casually, as if returning tens of thousands of dollars was a normal Tuesday morning activity. He was persuaded to return it. Persuaded. The word tasted like copper. What did you do to him? Nothing permanent? His voice was flat, emotionless. He'll recover, eventually. But he won't be bothering you again, and he'll think twice before stealing from vulnerable women in the future. I should have been horrified, should have been disgusted. Instead, something dark and satisfied coiled in my chest. Jake had taken everything from me, had left me and our daughter to struggle and suffer. And now he'd faced consequences, real consequences. I didn't ask you to do this, I said weakly. No. You asked me not to hurt him, and I didn't. Not seriously. He returned to his seat, watching me with those inscrutable eyes. But you didn't ask me not to get your money back. So I did. Consider it a demonstration. Of what? Of what it means to be under my protection. He leaned forward slightly. People who harm you will face consequences. People who threaten you will be dealt with. You and Emma would never have to be afraid again, Ava. Not of eviction. Not of hunger. Not of men like Martinez. That's what I'm offering. True security. The check felt heavy in my hands. This money, it could change everything. Could get us caught up on rent, buy Emma's medication for months, maybe even start a small savings account. Everything I'd been desperately scrabbling toward for 6 months, handed to me in a single piece of paper. "This is mine?" I asked. "No strings?" "It was always yours. I'm simply returning what was stolen." He paused. "Though I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hoping it would influence your decision about my offer. At least he was honest about the manipulation." I looked at the check again, then at Castellano, then at the floor-to-ceiling windows showing Seattle stretched out below. Up here, everything looked clean, ordered, safe. Down there was chaos and struggle and the grinding daily battle to survive. "I need to see Emma first," I said finally. "Before I decide anything, I need to see my daughter." He nodded, as if he'd expected this. "Of course. Dante will drive you. Take whatever time you need." He stood, preparing to leave, then paused. "Ava." I looked up at him. "Your daughter is lucky to have a mother who fights so hard for her. Whatever you decide, remember that." He left me alone with the check, the expensive breakfast, and the impossible choice. The ride to my apartment building felt surreal. Dante navigated the sleek SUV through Seattle's gray streets while I sat in the back, clutching the check like a talisman. $23,000. More money than I'd seen in one place since my mother died. Money that Jake had stolen, that I'd thought was gone forever. Money that Castellano had recovered through methods I definitely didn't want to examine too closely. "We're here, Miss Ava." Dante's voice was respectful but firm. He'd barely spoken during the drive, but I'd felt his constant awareness, the way he checked mirrors, scanned intersections, protection detail, I realized. Even something as simple as driving me home was a tactical operation for him. My building looked even more depressing than usual. Cracked concrete steps, graffiti on the entrance door that management had given up trying to remove, windows with bars that were supposed to make us feel safe, but mostly just reminded us we lived somewhere that needed bars on the windows. "I'll help you up." Dante was already out of the vehicle, opening my door before I could protest. "I can manage." "Boss's orders, miss. You don't walk unassisted until the doctor clears you." Boss's orders. I was going to have to get used to that phrase if I accepted Castellano's offer. Everything in his world operated on orders, on carefully maintained control. Dante supported me up the 3 flights of stairs, the elevator still broken, of course, and waited while I knocked on Mrs. Chen's door. The familiar sound of cartoons filtered through the thin walls, along with Emma's laugh. That sound, that pure, delighted giggle, made my chest ache. "Mrs." Chen opened the door, her weathered face breaking into a relieved smile. "Ava." Come in. Emma's been asking for you all morning." "Mama!" Emma launched herself at me, and I barely had time to brace before her small body collided with my legs. Pain shot through my ankle, but I didn't care. I crouched, awkwardly, carefully, and pulled her into my arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo and the indefinable smell that was just Emma. "Hi, baby girl." My voice cracked. "I missed you so much. Where were you?" She pulled back, her green eyes, Jake's eyes, unfortunately, searching my face with that uncanny perception 3-year-olds sometimes have. "Mrs. Chen said you got hurt." "I twisted my ankle at work, sweetheart, but I'm okay now." I smoothed her dark hair, so like my own. "Did you have fun with Mrs. Chen?" "We made cookies." She pointed to the kitchen, where I could see evidence of enthusiastic baking, flour everywhere, dishes piled in the sink. "And we watched Frozen, and I slept in the big bed," and she suddenly noticed Dante standing in the doorway, and her enthusiasm dimmed to uncertainty. "Who's that?" "That's Dante. He's a friend. He helped Mama get home." Dante, to my surprise, crouched to Emma's level, his hard features softening slightly. "Hello, Emma. Your mama tells me you like cartoons." Emma nodded shyly, half hiding behind my leg. "My niece loves cartoons too, especially the ones with princesses." He glanced at me, then back to Emma. "Maybe your mama will let me wait in the car while you two talk." It was smoothly done, giving me privacy while also making it clear he wasn't leaving. Protection, I realized again. Or surveillance. Maybe both. After Dante left, Mrs. Chen made tea while Emma showed me her coloring book, chattering about everything I'd missed. Normal. Beautifully, perfectly normal. This was our life. Small apartment, borrowed space, makeshift family comprised of whoever was kind enough to help. Ava, dear. Mrs. Chen's voice pulled me from Emma's explanation of why she'd colored the princess's dress purple instead of pink. That man who came by last night, the one who gave me money. She paused meaningfully. He was very well-dressed. I'd known this conversation was coming. Mrs. Chen had raised 3 kids, survived 40 years in this neighborhood, and had developed a radar for trouble that rivaled any security system. He's my boss. The lie came easier this time. He felt bad that I got hurt at work, so he's helping out until I can work again. Your boss. She didn't sound convinced. At the diner? It's complicated. I kept my voice low, conscious of Emma sitting nearby. But he's helping us, and right now, I need help. Mrs. Chen studied me for a long moment, then sighed. Just be careful, dear. Men like that. Men with money and power. They don't help people for free, I know. The words tasted bitter because they were true. But sometimes you take the help anyway, because the alternative is worse. She squeezed my hand, understanding in her tired eyes. She'd made her own difficult choices over the years. We all did, those of us living at the bottom, constantly calculating which risks were worth taking. After an hour of playing with Emma, reality began reasserting itself. Our apartment was across the hall, closer, but still requiring me to walk. And when I opened the door, the familiar space hit differently. The sagging couch I'd bought third hand, the tiny kitchen with appliances that worked most of the time, Emma's corner, carefully organized despite the cramped space, with her small bed and milk crates serving as shelves for her few toys. This was home. This was safety, in its own way. Known quantities, familiar struggles, but it was also slowly killing me. I saw it now with fresh eyes. The water stain on the ceiling that suggested plumbing issues in the unit above, the draft from windows that didn't quite seal, the thin walls that transmitted every argument from neighbors on both sides. This was what I'd been killing myself to maintain. This was what I'd destroyed my ankle protecting. Mama, can we have grilled cheese? Emma tugged on my sweater, oblivious to my crisis of perspective. Of course, baby. I hobbled to the kitchen, leaning heavily on counters for support. The refrigerator held some cheese, probably expired, bread that was getting stale, and not much else. I'd planned to grocery shop yesterday before everything had changed. My phone, which I'd retrieved from the apartment and finally charged, buzzed, an unknown number. How is your ankle? The text was brief, formal. But I knew who it was from. Fine. With Emma now. The response came immediately. Good. Take your time. Dante will wait as long as necessary. I stared at the message, then at Emma sitting at our tiny table, swinging her legs and humming to herself, happy, innocent, unaware that her mother was contemplating upending both their lives. The check was in my pocket. I could cash it, use it to catch up on everything, maybe even find a slightly better apartment. Go back to the diner, back to the grind, back to barely surviving, or I could accept Castellano's offer. Security, comfort, protection. All the things I desperately wanted for Emma. All the things I couldn't provide alone, but at what cost? I made the grilled cheese, cut it into triangles the way Emma liked, and watched her eat. She had a smear of cheese on her cheek, her hair was tangled from playing, and she was perfect. Absolutely perfect, and she deserved so much more than I could give her. That realization settled over me like a heavy coat. My phone buzzed again. Not Castellano this time, but Marco from the diner. Need to know if you're coming back. Got bills to pay. Can't hold position indefinitely. Of course he couldn't. I was replaceable. We all were. Those of us at the bottom. One injury, one crisis, and you were out. Someone else would take your place before your spot at the time clock was even cold. I thought about going back. About the endless shifts, the aching feet, the tips that never quite added up. About slowly destroying my body for wages that would never be enough. About Emma growing up watching her mother disappear piece by piece into exhaustion and desperation. Then I thought about Castellano's penthouse. About Maria's kindness, Dr. Marchetti's gentle efficiency, the implicit promise of a life where I wouldn't have to choose between my health and my rent. Where Emma could have music lessons and good schools and a childhood that didn't taste like desperation. I picked up my phone and typed carefully. I need to talk to you. Can Dante bring us back? The response was immediate. Of course. Whenever you're ready. I looked at Emma, my beautiful girl, and made my choice. Maybe it was the wrong one. Maybe I'd regret it. But it was mine to make, and I was making it for her. Emma, baby, how would you feel about going to see a new place? She looked up, cheese still on her cheek. Like an adventure? Yeah, sweetheart. Like an adventure. An hour later, we were back in the SUV. I'd packed a bag, just essentials, because I still wasn't sure this was permanent, still wasn't ready to commit completely. Emma sat beside me in a car seat that definitely hadn't been there earlier, secured with the kind of efficiency that suggested Dante had done this before. Nice car, Emma announced, touching the leather seats with wonder. It smells like new shoes. Despite everything, I smiled. Trust a 3-year-old to sum up luxury as smelling like new shoes. The palazzo looked different in afternoon light. Less intimidating, maybe. Or perhaps I was just getting used to the idea of it. Dante helped me from the car, then turned to Emma with unexpected gentleness. Want to see something cool? Emma nodded eagerly, and he pressed a button on his key fob. The SUV's lights flashed in a complex pattern that made Emma gasp with delight. Again, she demanded, and Dante obliged, his stern face almost smiling. The elevator ride up was quiet except for Emma's chatter about the buttons, the mirrors, how high we were going. She wasn't scared, wasn't nervous, just excited, seeing this all as the adventure I'd promised. If only I shared her confidence. Castellano was waiting when the doors opened. He'd changed again, back to a suit, dark and perfectly fitted, but his attention went immediately to Emma, and something in his expression shifted, softened, just slightly. You must be Emma. He crouched down, same as Dante had, bringing himself to her level. I'm Luca. Are you Mama's friend? Emma asked with the blunt honesty of children. I am. He glanced at me briefly, something unreadable in his dark eyes. And I'm very happy to meet you. Do you have toys? Trust Emma to cut straight to what mattered. I don't. He said it seriously, like this was an important admission. But we could get some if you'd like. What's your favorite? Dinosaurs, Emma announced proudly. The big ones with long necks. Brachiosaurus, Castellano Luca said with a small smile. Excellent choice. He stood then, offering me his hand. I took it, let him help me up, and tried to ignore how his touch sent sparks along my skin. Maria has prepared rooms for you both, he said quietly. Connected, so Emma will be close. I thought you'd prefer that. Thank you. The words felt inadequate. He led us down a hallway I hadn't seen before, to a suite that took my breath away. The main room was decorated in soft neutrals, with a large bed, sitting area, and windows that offered the same stunning city view. But it was the connecting room that made my throat tight. A child's bedroom, already furnished. Not pink or purple or any of the princess cliches. Instead, it was done in soft greens and blues, with cloud-painted walls and a bed shaped like a reading nook. And there, on a shelf clearly installed recently, was a collection of dinosaur figures, including several long-necked Brachiosaurus. When did you... I started. This morning. After you said you needed to see Emma, he was watching my reaction carefully. I wanted her to feel welcome. Emma had already discovered the dinosaurs, letting out a delighted squeal that made my eyes burn with tears I refused to shed. You didn't have to do this, I whispered. Yes, I did. He turned to face me fully. If you're going to trust me with your safety, with your daughter's happiness, then I need to show you I'm worthy of that trust. This, he gestured to the room, is just the beginning. Mama, look. Emma held up a purple triceratops. Can I play with them? Of course you can, baby. They're yours. As Emma settled into playing, making the dinosaurs have elaborate conversations, Luca guided me back into the main room, closing the connecting door slightly so we could talk, but I could still see Emma. So, he settled into the chair across from me. Have you made your decision? I looked at the room. Beautiful, safe, comfortable. Looked through the doorway at Emma, happier than I'd seen her in months. Thought about the check in my pocket, the choices that had led me here, the future I could give her if I was brave enough to take this chance. I have conditions, I said finally. I'm listening. Emma comes first. Always. If I ever feel she's unsafe or unhappy, or if this arrangement isn't working for her, we leave immediately. No arguments. Agreed. I want everything in writing. The financial arrangement, the expectations, all of it. Clear terms. My lawyer will draft something by tomorrow. And I took a breath. I need to know what I'm really getting into. Your business, your world. I won't be complicit in anything that hurts people, and I won't raise Emma around violence. His expression darkened slightly. My business is complicated. But I can promise you this. You'll never be asked to participate in anything illegal, and Emma will be kept completely separate from the less pleasant aspects of my work. She'll be protected, insulated. As will you. Can you really promise that? To keep us separate from the danger? Yes. He said it with absolute certainty, because you're not an asset to be used, Ava. You're... He paused, seeming to search for words. You're something different, something I want to protect, not exploit. The intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. This was more than a business arrangement for him. I could see it in the way he looked at me, in the care he'd taken with Emma's room, in the fierce protectiveness that had made him track down Jake and recover my money. This was dangerous, not because he was dangerous, though he absolutely was, but because I could feel myself responding to it. To him. To the promise of safety and security, and someone actually giving a damn whether I survived. Okay, I said quietly. We'll try it. A trial period, 3 months. If it's not working, for any of us, we can end it. No hard feelings. Something flashed across his face, relief maybe, or satisfaction. 3 months, he agreed. But Ava, yes, it's going to work. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. Because I don't fail at things I care about. And I find that I care quite a bit about making sure you and Emma are happy here. Before I could respond, Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching 3 dinosaurs. Mama, can Luca play dinosaurs with us? I looked at him, this powerful, dangerous man who'd orchestrated my life with casual efficiency, and waited to see what he'd say. He smiled. Actually smiled. Genuine and warm. I'd be honored. And there, in that expensive penthouse high above Seattle, with my daughter's laughter filling the air, and a man I barely knew arranging plastic dinosaurs with unexpected gentleness, I let myself believe, just for a moment, that maybe everything would be okay. Maybe I'd found something more than just security. Maybe I'd found a place where Emma and I could finally stop running, stop struggling, stop simply surviving. Maybe I'd found home. The city glittered outside our windows. The rain had cleared to reveal late afternoon sun, and Emma's voice rose in delighted storytelling as she made her dinosaurs explore their new world. Luca listened with focused attention, asking questions, building on her imaginative narrative with a patience I never would have expected. And I sat there, ankle throbbing but healing, check in my pocket representing a recovered past, future stretching ahead, uncertain but promising, and let myself hope. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I let myself hope. Whatever this arrangement became, whatever complicated tangle of protection and need and growing attraction it involved, it was ours now. Mine and Emma's, and somehow Luca's too. The choice was made. The adventure was beginning. And maybe, just maybe, we'd all find what we were looking for.